Abuja's pulse stormed through Wuse Market, where vendors shouted over the hum of avocados and the clatter of carts laden with yams and fabrics. Chidi weaved through the crowd, a plastic bag swinging from his hand, its contents, a coloring book and crayons, meant for a little girl he rarely saw awake. For months, his visit to Kemi's cramped apartment in Garki had followed a troubling rhythm. Kemi's daughter, Amara, 5 years old, was always asleep when he arrived, her small body curled under a faded blanket, untouched by the city's clamor. Chidi, a data analyst with a sharp eye for patterns, couldn't ignore the anomaly. Amara's sleep wasn't the fleeting nap of a child but a heavy, unnatural stillness that clung like a shadow. He'd spent weekends with his sister's twins in Abuja, their naps a chaotic dance of giggles and sudden kicks. Amara's slumber was different, too perfect, too silent. Each visit, Chidi brought gifts, dolls, sweets, a puzzle once, hoping to catch her awake, her eyes bright with the curiosity he imagined she must have. But she remained locked in her silent world, her blanket unmoved, her face pale. The vibrant chaos of Abuja, hawkers calling out prices, radios blaring Afrobeat, faded in those moments, replaced by a question that gnawed at him: why was Amara always asleep? Chidi paused at a stall, the vendor's voice pulling him back. "Brother, buy pencils for the child," she urged, waving a pack. He smiled, declining, but the word child lingered. Amara deserved more than his gifts, she deserved to be seen. He recalled Kemi's nervous laugh last week, her quick change of subject when he mentioned Amara's sleep. Was it exhaustion, or something darker? As he navigated the market's narrow paths, a child ran past, laughing, so unlike Amara's silence. Chidi's resolve grew: he'd bring more than gifts next time, he'd bring questions. The sun dipped lower, and he headed to Garki, determined to uncover the truth behind the child's endless sleep. Chidi pushed open the door to Kemi's one-bedroom apartment, the familiar scent of fried plantain and egusi stew filling the air. The space was modest, its walls stained with age, a single bulb flickering above a worn table cluttered with fabric scraps. In the corner, a narrow bed held Amara, her small frame tucked under a thin blanket, her face serene but pale, almost ghostly in the dim light. "She's asleep again?" Chidi asked, setting down a plastic bag from Wuse Market, a plastic doll with braided hair and a pack of crayons, chosen with care from a vendor's crowded stall. Kemi, stirring a pot on a two-burner stove, nodded without turning. "Always, after she eats," she said, her voice clipped, her hands moving too quickly, as if to drown out the silence. Chidi settled onto a sagging couch, its springs creaking under his weight. His eyes drifted to Amara, her chest rising and falling in a rhythm too steady, too perfect for a 5-year-old. He'd spent weekends with his sister's twins in Abuja, their naps a chaotic mix of snores, sudden giggles, and restless limbs. Amara's sleep was different, unyielding, untouched by the clatter of pots or the blare of a neighbor's radio playing Davido's latest hit. "She's a deep sleeper," Kemi offered, unprompted, her tone forced as she adjusted the flame, her back still to him. Over weeks, the pattern held. Chidi visited twice weekly, each time bearing small tokens, a pack of biscuits, a coloring book with cartoon animals, a toy car that squeaked when rolled. He'd linger, hoping to see Amara awake, perhaps drawing or asking questions like his niece, Neka, who chattered endlessly. But Amara was always asleep, her blanket unmoved, her hands folded neatly, her lips slightly parted, her face devoid of the rosy flush he'd expect from a healthy child. He varied his visits, arriving at dawn when Abuja streets stirred with traders or in the late afternoon when children's laughter echoed from nearby compounds. Yet Amara remained in her cocoon, a statue in a world that moved around her. One evening, as Kemi laughed over a story about a coworker's botched presentation at their telecom firm, Chidi's gaze lingered on Amara. She hadn't stirred in hours, not even when Kemi dropped a ladle with a metallic clang that echoed through the small room. His stomach twisted, a knot of suspicion tightening. "Kemi," he said, keeping his voice light, "does Amara ever wake up when I'm here?" Kemi's laughter faltered, her hand pausing mid-stir. "She's just tired, Chidi. You know how kids are." Her eyes darted to the side, a flicker of unease crossing her face, her fingers gripping the spoon too tightly. Chidi leaned forward, his mind racing. Neka woke at the creak of a door or the call of her name. Amora's stillness wasn't normal. He stood, pacing the small room, his eyes scanning for clues. A half-empty bottle of orange juice sat on a table near Amora's bed, its cap loose, the liquid catching the dim light. He didn't touch it, but the sight lingered, a puzzle piece he couldn't place. Kemi watched him, her fingers twisting the edge of her wrapper. "You're acting strange," she said, forcing a smile. "Want some stew?" Chidi declined, his thoughts elsewhere. He sat beside Amara, studying her. The blanket was too neat, as if arranged to conceal something. He spoke softly, calling her name, but she didn't stir. The radio blared a jingle about a new data plan, yet Amara remained still. He noticed her hands, always in the same position, as if posed. His unease grew into a quiet resolve. At work, he analyzed data for patterns, outliers, anomalies, and Amara was an outlier, her sleep a signal of something wrong. He stood again, moving to the window, where Abuja's evening hum filtered through, traders packing up, children shouting, Okodas weaving through traffic. The city was alive, but Amara was not. He turned back, his voice steady. "Kemi, I need to know what's going on with her." Kemi's knife paused mid-chop, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment before looking away. "Nothing's going on," she said, but her voice trembled, a crack in her facade. Chidi's suspicion hardened. He'd seen enough patterns to know when something didn't add up. Amara wasn't just sleeping, she was being kept that way. He lingered longer that night, watching Kemi's nervous movements, the way she avoided Amara's bed. As he left, the weight of his discovery settled in. He needed answers, and he wouldn't stop until he had them. Chidi's visits to Kemi's apartment had become a ritual, each one layered with unease. At work, his desk was a clutter of reports, but his mind strayed to Amara. His colleagues at the tech firm in Metoma, with their talk of deadlines and bonuses, seemed distant from the reality of Garki's cramped compounds. He'd spent the previous day analyzing data trends, but Amara's consistent sleep was the pattern he couldn't ignore. During a lunch break, he'd called his sister, Amoka, describing Amara's stillness. "Kids don't sleep like that," Amoka said, her voice sharp. "Check on her, Chidi." Her words echoed as he entered Kemi's apartment, the air thick with stew and tension. Kemi's behavior grew more telling. She hovered over the stove, her chatter about work first, her eyes avoiding Amara's bed. Chidi noticed her hands tremble as she sliced onions, her laughter too loud when he asked about Amara's day. He sat closer to the girl, watching her breathe, her stillness unnerving. He recalled a market visit with Kemi, where she'd snapped at a vendor for delaying them, her urgency odd. Was she rushing to keep Amara asleep before his visits? The thought chilled him. He stood, moving to the small kitchen area, pretending to inspect the stew. "Smells good," he said, watching Kemi's reaction. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He glanced at the juice bottle again, its cap loose, a faint smudge on the rim. "Does Amara like this brand?" he asked, casual. Kemi's hand froze, then resumed chopping. "She loves it," she said, too quickly. Chidi's suspicion grew. He thought of Nneka, who'd spill juice in excitement. Amara never moved. He returned to the couch, his mind mapping the anomaly, his resolve firming. He'd come back tomorrow, earlier, to catch Kemi unprepared. The truth was close, and he wouldn't let it slip away. Chidi arrived early the next week, the morning sun casting long shadows across Garki's dusty streets. He timed his visit to catch Kemi off guard, his bag heavier with a new gift, a puzzle book from a bookstore near Area 11, its bright cover promising hours of fun. Kemi was sweeping the floor, her movements hurried when she saw him. "You're early," she said, her smile strained, her eyes flicking to Amara, who was asleep, as always, her small hands folded neatly on the bed. Chidi nodded, settling onto the couch, his gaze fixed on the girl, his heart already racing with suspicion. When Kemi stepped into the bathroom to shower, Chidi seized the moment. He knelt beside Amara, watching her closely. Her breathing was slow, almost mechanical, her face pale under the dim light. He leaned closer, his ear near her nose, and caught a faint, sharp scent, alcohol, like the cheap appetite she sold in roadside kiosks. His heart sank, a mix of shock and dread washing over him. This wasn't just deep sleep, it was deliberate, a betrayal he hadn't wanted to believe. He straightened, his eyes scanning the room with purpose. On a shelf, tucked behind a stack of folded clothes, was a small bottle of pills. He didn't touch it, but the label read diazepam, sedatives, not meant for a child. His mind raced, connecting the alcohol scent, the pills, and Amara's unnatural slumber. He checked the table beside her bed, where the juice bottle still sat, its cap askew. He lifted it, sniffing cautiously. The sweet orange scent was there, but beneath it, a faint bitterness lingered, like medicine poorly masked. His stomach churned, the pieces falling into place. At work, he'd been praised for spotting errors in data sets. This was an error, a glaring one, and it was harming a child. When Kemi emerged, towel around her shoulders, Chidi's voice was steady but firm. "Kemi, what's Amara been taking?" Her eyes widened, her hands clutching the towel. "What do you mean?" she stammered, her voice high. Chidi pointed to the bottle of pills. "Tell me the truth." Kemi's shoulders slumped. She crossed the room, retrieved the bottle, and held it tightly, her knuckles pale. "It's just to help her sleep," she whispered. "I don't want her disturbing us." "Disturbing us?" Chidi's voice rose, disbelief sharp in his tone. "She's 5, Kemi. And her breath smells like alcohol, not just pills." Kemi's face crumpled, tears welling. She denied the alcohol, claiming it was a misunderstanding, perhaps from a cough syrup she'd used once. But her fidgeting betrayed her, her hands shook, her eyes avoided his. She admitted to giving Amara small doses of diazepam, starting months ago when Chidi's visits became regular. "I just wanted us to walk," she said, her voice breaking. "Men left me before because of her. I thought if she slept, you'd stay." Chidi's anger surged, tempered by sorrow. He thought of Nneka, her laughter filling his sister's home. No child deserved this. He paced the room, his mind a storm. "How long, Kemi?" he asked. "How much are you giving her?" Kemi sobbed, saying it was small doses, just enough to keep Amara quiet during his visits. She swore she hadn't used alcohol, but her hesitation made Chidi doubt her. He pointed to the juice bottle. Is it in there? Kemi shook her head, but her eyes darted to the bottle, and Chidi's heart sank further. He sat, his head in his hands, the room closing in. The hum of Abuja outside, vendors calling, horns blaring, felt distant. Amora's small form held him there, a silent plea. This has to stop, he said finally. Kemi nodded, tears streaming, promising to stop, but Chidi wasn't sure he could trust her. At work, his colleagues noticed his distraction, his reports late, his focus elsewhere. He thought of the men Kemi mentioned, the ones who left because of Amara. Was this her pattern, drugging her child to keep a man? The thought made him sick. Chidi stood, his resolve hardening. He couldn't stay with Kemi, not after this, but he couldn't abandon Amara. He needed a plan. As he left, Kemi's voice followed him, pleading. Chidi, please, don't hate me. I didn't mean to hurt her. He didn't respond, his steps heavy as he walked into the evening heat. Abuja's lights flickered on, but all he saw was Amara's still face, her breath tainted with a secret he'd uncovered. He drove to his office, the data screens a blur, his mind fixed on what to do next. A coworker, noticing his unease, asked if he was okay. Chidi shook his head, unable to explain. He needed to protect Amara, and he needed help to do it. Chidi's confrontation with Kemi replayed in his mind as he drove back to Asekoro, the city's lights blurring. At work, his distraction was palpable, spreadsheets untouched, his boss's emails ignored. A colleague, turned, noticed. Chidi, you good? He asked during a coffee break. Chidi shook his head, unable to share the weight of Amara's plight. He thought of the juice bottle, the bitter undertone he'd smelled. Was it deliberate, or a mistake born of Kemi's desperation? He recalled her tears, her plea, don't hate me, but the image of Amara's pale face overshadowed her words. That night, he researched diazepam, the side effects chilling, drowsiness, confusion, worse in children. He thought of Amara's sluggish movements when briefly awake, her eyes unfocused. At the office, he confided in a coworker, Sarah, who had a daughter. That's not normal, she said, horrified. You need to do something. Her words pushed him to act, but fear of the system, its inefficiencies, its risks, held him back. He needed a plan that protected Amara without destroying Kemi.